Hotelier, which is how I believe it is the band name is meant to be pronounced, are an American band from Worcester, Massachusetts. They were formed in 2009. They released their first album in 2011 and their third in 2016, and that was the most recent. They've had a stable lineup, except for the second guitarist. They've had 6 of those. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is a request review. And it was requested by somebody using the the screen name Alex in a comment on the review of another album by the Hotelier, I believe that's how it's pronounced, which is the album like Home Like No Place Is There. And they requested that 3 months ago, and yeah, it takes me a little while to get around to them. Sorry about that. And I should say, as I always do on the reviews that are off my main list, my main list that I'm reviewing is the 3,000 greatest albums of all time, according to acclaimedmusic.com. But occasionally I step off that list and do some other things like these request reviews. If you want to request a review, just leave a comment on any of my videos on my channel. And I'm not going to make any promises, just in case it's something that I really don't want to review for some reason. And as you can see from this, it takes me a little while to get around to them, but I generally do. So here we are. So this is the third album by the Hotelier, and it's my first time listening to it. But obviously I have heard them before because I've reviewed one of their other albums. I would describe this broadly as indie rock. I think it's a fairly good description. It's kind of guitar-based rock. There's often that kind of indie sound, which has got this, what I think of as the thrashy curtain of guitar that backs it up, which is basically a constant sound of guitar chords. That's going on. I particularly noticed in the drums there's a snare that cuts through that really nicely. Quite a strident snare sound. I quite like a good snare sound. And the singing that is kind of somewhere on the spectrum between. So sometimes it's a bit like Michael Stipe of REM, and partly I think that's underpinned by the fact that sometimes the music is quite similar to REM in some ways. And then at the other end of the spectrum, it's kind of bordering on emo, which is almost kind of falling apart with the emotion of what he's shouting about. And at that point, it becomes kind of more shouty rather than singing. However, the amount of this that's that kind of style of thing is less than on the other album that I reviewed, Home Like No Place Is There. And for me, I found it much more acceptable in smaller amounts in here. I think it actually, in some ways, it adds to the atmosphere and the feel of the album and the emotional content of it. So I'm not a huge fan generally of indie rock, partly because I just feel like there's lots and lots of bands that have just done stuff that's just really very similar. For me, this album is better than most indie rock. I found it more interesting. I found it more inventive. There's various more interesting things going on. I'm just going to pick out a few. So there are 3 tracks that are named after grid references, and I took the tiny amount of time that it does to actually put them into Google Maps and see where they came up. And they seem to be random places in New England, one in New Hampshire, one in Vermont, one in Massachusetts, I think. They're probably not actually random. There's presumably some significance to these places. They're not places, obviously, that I know. One of these, so the first one on the album is a spoken word track, and the other 2 seem to be kind of acoustic tracks. So there's obviously something going on there of significance to the band. There are some other less unusual bits. There's an extended passage in the track called Sun that is quite interesting musically and kind of texturally. The track Fear of Good is kind of more empty and stripped back. So the person, Alex, who requested this review said that they really liked the songwriting, And I confess that I didn't really dig too deep into that as I listened. It somewhat passed over me, and maybe it would reward more listens. But it does seem to be decent from what I did pick up. It certainly seems to have quite an intelligence about it. There were times that I thought, that's quite references there that not everybody would pick up, and definitely references that I wouldn't pick up and know what they're talking about. So I wouldn't say it's kind of exclusive in the way that it's highbrow, but it's certainly intelligent in the way that it seems to approach stuff. Musically, as I've said, I think it's nicely put together. It's well played. It's well produced. And as I've already said, indie rock is generally not my kind of thing because too much of it's too similar. But this has enough difference and strength to it that I don't feel like I'm going to just dismiss it out of hand. It is still in that style, so it doesn't get a glowing score from me because my score reflects how much I enjoyed it, and I kind of reasonably enjoyed it. And so definitely more than some stuff that would be somewhat similar in style. So, Alex, here you are. This is what I think of this album. And anybody else, if you want to let us know what you think of the album, please do leave a comment. I always like to get a conversation going. And that's it from me for now.